What's happening, hardscapers? This is episode 10 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk to you about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. Tune in every week as we cover a subject and interview industry leaders on how you can grow your hardscaping business, from new installation methods, techniques, tools, marketing, financials, and so much more. On today's episode, we talk with Techniseal, and we talk about sealing and cleaning. This is a great episode, lots of great information, and it's also a way to incorporate more services and ways that you can provide more value to your customers, as well as make a little bit more money on every contract that you sell by including these cleaning and sealing services. It's a great way to expand your business and to make more money with less effort than going out there and getting new clients. You're selling to your already existing clients a few more services to make more money with every client that you sign up. If you're listening to this episode and you see value in it and you're loving what you're hearing, take a screenshot of it and tag us on Instagram, put it in your stories, and let us know what's the most valuable piece of advice you got from this episode, something that you are looking forward to using in your business. We're really loving everyone that's sharing this podcast and putting it in their stories. It's really great to get your feedback, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Let's jump right into the episode. Today we are joined by Aaron Phifer, Sales Manager for Techniseal, a company that is a pioneer in the development of solutions for the maintenance of exterior surfaces. Hello, Aaron, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Aaron, why don't you give our audience a little bit of a background about yourself and what led you to Techniseal?
Yeah, so I started on the dealership side of hardscapes. I was running an independent hardscape dealership in Greenville, South Carolina area, selling, a few different brands of pavers and accessories. And actually what led me to Techniseal was one of my biggest customers was having some issues with a few things and said, hey, you know what I used in the past I haven't been able to find it in a couple of years is Techniseal. So I actually reached out to Techniseal, became a Techniseal dealer, built a really strong relationship with all those guys. And then opportunity presented itself. I left my dealership and joined the Techniseal team almost 5 years ago. So I've been here about 5 years now. Started out as a sales rep I've covered a lot of the country at one point or another, anywhere from Virginia to Mississippi to Georgia, Tennessee, everywhere in between. For the past 18 months, I've been the sales manager for the Eastern United States. So covering anywhere from the Mississippi to the Atlantic Ocean.
What about Techniseal? Can you give our audience a little bit of a background about Techniseal, the company, for anybody that maybe hasn't heard of the company before?
Yeah, sure. So actually here in 2019, Techniseal celebrating our 35th anniversary of being in business. We did that back in September. We're based out of Canada. We're in a city called Candiac, which is right across the river from Montreal. You know, our first product we ever made was our efflorescence cleaner. That was the first problem we ever trying to solve for the industry was getting rid of efflorescence on dry cast concrete pavers. If you are in Canada, you probably see us all over on the retail side as well. We make wood stains, garage floor coatings, roof coatings, stuff like that we sell on the retail, Home Depot, Lowe's side. In the U.S., we're strictly a pro market, and we make any accessory for hardscape concrete products. So, you know, our goal is if you have whatever manufacturer's pavers and wall block on the job site, we should be able to make everything else that you need besides the tools to install it, of course, and aggregate. So, you know, we make everything from polymeric sand, which we invented and brought to market in 1999, cleaners, sealers, adhesive, edging, easy base, all sorts of stuff.
Amazing. And I brought you on the show today to specifically talk about the sealers and the cleaners, to give our audience a little bit of a rundown about what they need to know when they're going to seal a project, or if there's anything on the interlock that they need to clean. So let's start by talking about the cleaning process. If somebody has installed some interlock and they're getting ready to seal it, obviously the cleaning process comes first. What should the hardscaper look for when they're getting ready to clean something from the surface of the interlock?
Yeah, so when you're going out to quote that job or to look at for the first time, you're going to be looking at a few things. Obviously, you're going to look for efflorescence, which is a natural occurring process in concrete. That's a salt deposit from water leaving. But, really we're all going to be cleaning with an efflorescence cleaner because you have to do that. Even if you don't do that, if you don't have any efflorescence showing, what a sealer will actually do when you put it on there is it'll actually make efflorescence that's not naked to your eye pop. And sometimes you've seen people seal a job that they haven't cleaned, and you see those little circles on it. That's actually the sealer showing efflow. So we know we're going to have efflorescence cleaning built into our quote. But what we also want to have built in there, if we have them, is specialty stains that could take more work and maybe even another trip out to the job site. So I'm looking for rust stains caused by fertilizer or by metal patio furniture they're sitting on out there that we're going to have to take a rust cleaner to. I'm looking for paint from somebody maybe painting the exterior of their house. We're going to have to get that off. Rubber from maybe they have a garage where they turn 90 degrees into it every day and they're having rubber rub off onto their pavers. We're going to have to get that off before there. Oil is a big one we're looking for, and grease. And then organic stains as well, like deposits left by not blowing off your patio all fall and having leaf stains on it, things like that. So all those we make specialty cleaners for, but that is an extra step. Now, a lot of those you can do when you're out at the job site that day to efflorescence clean. But one thing you really have to look out for is oil stains, because oil stains actually take about 12 hours to remove, because you're going to put that oil remover on there is actually going to pull the oil back into the cleaner over a process of hours, and you'll come back and scrape it off. It'll almost be like a hockey puck when you're done. So those are things I'm looking for when I'm walking that job the first time is efflorescence. Do we have any tough efflow we're going to have to get off? And all these specialty stains that I'm going to make sure I'm going to have to clean off. And of course, if you have a bunch of rust stains because somebody left a bunch of fertilizer on the patio or something, that's an extra charge. You need to be charging them because you're going to have the cleaner and you're going to have the extra labor on that job.
Now, with these cleaners, what I've seen is the directions on the packaging is really easy and nice to follow. It's a nice, simple process. Now, in terms of the oil cleaning, is there sometimes it has to be applied multiple times. Is that correct? And to pull out as much of that oil as you can?
Sometimes, yeah. And also the temperature can play a factor in that. Actually, that's a cleaner that actually likes a warmer temperature. So if it's actually warmer, it might work a little faster and better for you. If it's cooler, it might take a couple times. A lot of factors in that, but most of the time you can get those stains out on your first attempt. If you have a big oil stain, I would go ahead and put it in your budget that you might have to come out there a couple times just to be safe.
For sure. Now, and there's different specifications on temperature with all these things. If you are, say, cleaning a rust stain or an oil spill or anything like this, and you accidentally apply this cleaner outside of the affected areas, is that going to negatively affect the color of these stones or anything like that?
No, we try to make everything we can forgiving as we can to our contractors, but yet as harsh as we can on the stains. So no, if you pour, rust is normally little tiny spots. If you over apply the rust remover, as long as you rinse it off properly, follow the instructions, and don't just let it sit on the surface for a long time, you're going to be perfectly fine. The only time you're really going to run into problem with cleaners is, if you're not following the instructions and you're not rinsing them off properly, or you're letting them sit on the surface too long. I've been on a job site before training some guys, and we were cleaning a long pathway about 200 feet down to a boat ramp. And the guys had stopped for lunch, and one guy had poured the efflorescence cleaner on there, and we were sitting at the bottom of the hill eating lunch, and looked up about 15 minutes later and saw the paver starting to turn white. And I said, we got some efflow cleaner on there, guys. So we just put the hose on it, scrubbed it really well, and got that bag off of there. So we were lucky. But if we had left that job site and gone off site for lunch and come back an hour later, we might have had a bit of more of an issue. So as long as you're following the instructions, the cleaners are very forgiving.
Excellent. Now, when you are ready to seal and you're going to do the effluent cleaning, what's the difference between choosing the effluent cleaner and the paver prep?
So we have a couple options. We have paver prep and paver prep HD. Those are our versions of an effluent cleaner. You know, some people just call them effluent cleaners. So, you know, there's lots of different names for the different guys out there in the industry. But our main product is paver prep and paver prep HD, which paver prep HD is just a stronger version of paver prep. Most of the time, if I was a contractor, I'd ask your dealer to carry paver prep HD because you're just getting more bang for your buck, really. We do have to have paver prep in some parts of the country where we can't sell that stronger acid, like out in the western part of the United States. And then we have paver restore as well. So paver restore is not only an efflorescence cleaner, but also will take off cementitious issues. So cut dust, say you were cutting the job in and it rained on you, or you didn't blow all that dust off and got wet and it got reactivated. We can take that cut dust off with paver restore. Or say you were using a cheaper polymeric sand that still had polymeric haze, that could be an issue. It can take off polymeric haze as well. Now, if you use paver restore, you don't have to come back and use paver prep HD as well. You just can use one or the other.
Now that we've cleaned everything, before we move on to the sealing part, I do have a question about, since these are chemicals, can these just be rinsed off and let float into the public sewer system, or do these need to be caught in some way and disposed of by the installer?
Most of the time it's going to be fine to let them run off. You know, certainly check with your city if, you know, there's some places where regulations are very, very tight, but 95+% of the time it's perfectly fine. The acid, by the time you get it into the groundwater, is very diluted, because not only have you cut it before you even put it onto the surface, but then you're using a ton of water to get it back off the surface. So it's very diluted. I would say one good thing to do with any effluent cleaner is to go ahead and spray all the vegetation around the patio or the driveway before you start, and go ahead and pre-saturate and dilute it a little bit, just so you don't brown the grass or damage any of the plants around it. And it is safe, once you've rinsed it off and everything, for your customers to let their pets back out, you know, their dogs back out in the backyard and everything like that.
Excellent information. And one last thing about the effluent cleaner. I've seen some really bad cases of efflorescence on stone before. Would you ever recommend doing a second time effluent cleaner, or giving it a period in between the cleaning to see if any more effluent comes up? Or is that first time effluent cleaning, is that okay to move on to the sealing as soon as you can?
No, if you have visible effluent still after one cleaning, you'll definitely want to clean it again. You don't want to seal over any of that efflorescence if at all possible. If you have an extreme case of efflorescence, I'd probably contact your paver manufacturer first, just to make sure, or talk to your local dealer, make sure it's not a bigger issue that you didn't know about. Normally, it's just something that'll go away naturally over time. The only thing that can really cause it to keep coming back is maybe you have a moisture issue underneath the surface of the pavers that is keeping the bottom of the pavers wet and causing that salt and moisture cycle to just keep going through and causing more and more effluent.
Now, I just wanted to jump in here really quick to talk about what was just said by Aaron here. And he talked about the reason why efflorescence is continuously coming to the surface in your jobs, if it is because of moisture not being able to escape underneath the interlock. So that moisture is causing the efflorescence to reappear at the surface of the interlock. And this relates to installing an open graded base in your projects. So we talked about installing an open graded base in episode 6 of the How to Hardscape podcast. Listen to that episode if you haven't already. It's just another reason why installing an open graded base can really help that moisture flow down and through your installation instead of getting trapped underneath that interlock. Now, if you're still using stone dust or chip dust or whatever you call it in your area, it's not allowing that water to penetrate through that base material. It hardens. The water sits underneath your interlock, and it's going to continuously cause moisture to sit there and efflorescence to continuously show at the surface of your stone. Now back to the interview. Now moving on to the sealing portion of this, I understand there's many different products for sealing. There's water-based, there's solvent-based, there's, wet look, natural look. So many different things that hardscapers need to consider when coming to their customer to see what kind of look they're going for. What would you suggest a hardscaper present their customer with when trying to decide which direction that customer wants to go with?
I would try to make it easier for your customer. You're the expert and you have to present it that way. So I would come in there with probably 2, most likely 3 options and ask them to choose from that. You don't want to give them 6 or 7 different options and be like, hey, do you want solvent based? Do you want water based? To them, they don't care about that. They just know what they want it to look like and what they want it to do. So I like my contractors to get really comfortable with 2 or 3 products and present those. And a lot of the times even have a little mock-up made. Have your natural look on one paver, have your color boost on a second paver, have your wet look on a third paver. Show those 3 pavers to the customer, show them what their paver looks like unsealed as a 4th paver, and kind of give them the options to let them go from there. It's a lot easier for them to just see it and for you to show it to them than it is for you to just throw a book in front of them and be like, hey, do you like any of those looks?
Now, when deciding solvent or water-based, is there any particular one that is better, or what is the difference between how they adhere to the stone?
Performance-wise, they're very similar for us. We put a lot of our technology and R&D into water-based over the last, 8 to 10 years because of VOC regulations in markets like California and stuff like that. And just the fact that our water-based were outperforming some of our solvent-based. We actually dropped some of our solvent-based products because our water-based products are honestly better. But, there's plenty of guys that are comfortable with using solvents. Solvents are sometimes a little bit cheaper. They feel it's a little easier if they mess up solvent-based to go back and fix it. So, solvent versus water-based is really, to me, at this point, kind of the applicator preference. We can give you the same performance out of both. Water-based, non-film forming water-based sealers have some advantages compared to film forming sealers that are water-based or solvent-based. So, a lot of it just comes down to what you're comfortable with. What your customer is comfortable with. Some customers that are environmentally concerned or just come out there and smell all the xylene coming off of a 5-gallon bucket of solvent-based sealer might not be as comfortable with that as if you're putting down a water-based sealer, which basically, looks like, smells like nothing. So performance-wise, longevity-wise, they're very similar for us.
In terms of how the product adheres to the stone, how does a water-based sealer adhere to the stone as opposed to the solvent-based? Is there different processes in the way in which it protects the stone?
For us, our solvent-based products are only film formers, so they're going to sit on top of the surface. Where with our water-based, we have film formers and non-film formers, so you have both. The best analogy I give is staining a piece of wood. When you stain a piece of wood, that wood stain soaks into the surface. That's a non-film forming sealer. That's a penetrating sealer. When you paint a piece of wood, that paint sits on top of the wood. That's the same thing with a film forming sealer. It's sitting on top of the paver. So there's some pros and cons to both. The nice thing about a non-film forming sealer is it's a little more breathable. So it can allow, if you do have some efflorescence occur, it could actually let that efflow work its way through the sealer and out. Whereas if you put a hard film forming sealer on top, is actually trap that efflorescence in. So if you had efflow pop up on you later on, you'd actually probably have to strip that sealer off, then clean it, then reseal it to get that efflorescence to go away. Another thing with film forming sealers is they tend to wear out where the traffic is. So if you have a driveway and you put a film forming sealer on it, you might look at it 2 years and have shiny, not shiny, shiny, not shiny, shiny, where those tires are driving on every day, that the film's actually wearing away there quicker than it is on the rest of the surface. With a non-film forming sealer like a Color Boost or like a Natural Look from us, that actually is all wearing away evenly. I would definitely recommend a non-film forming sealer, a penetrating sealer for a pool deck. Because what's the first question the mom is going to ask you when you're talking about putting a sealer on a pool deck? Am I going to make it more slippery? So, with a sealer that soaks into the surface, it's not going to do that. For pool decks, I would definitely recommend a water-based penetrating sealer like a Color Boost or a Natural Look.
Definitely. Now, if a customer decides that they want to go water-based today, but when they go to reseal it, they decide that they prefer the solvent-based or vice versa, can they ever switch?
They can switch as long as there's nothing left on the surface. So, the easiest test to do is when you're talking about resealing anything, if you have a contract with that customer to come back and reseal it, I say when you leave that job site, tell them that you're going to put an alarm in your calendar 2 years from that day, and you're going to call them on that day, and you're going to say, hey, when it rains on that patio, is it still beating water? And they say yes, and you say, okay, I'll call you again in 6 months. If they say no, then you ask them to walk out there with a bottle of water, pour the bottle of water in a few spots, ask them if it's beating up. If it's beating up, say yes, I'll call you in a few months. Say if it's not, say okay, I'll come out and look at it. And then you can come out there and check it yourself, basically doing that same test in several spots, seeing if it's accepting water, if it's still beating water. If the sealer's still beating water, there's no point in putting a sealer back over top of it, because if it's still beating water, it's going to beat the sealer as well. So you're not getting the full adhering of the sealer to the surface. You're actually just sticking it back on top of the layer of sealer that's already on there at that point. When it's no longer beating water, then you know it's ready to reapply.
Yeah, and that brings in the longevity of these sealers, how long they last. It's definitely a question that I get asked a lot by customers. How long is it going to last? When am I going to need to reseal? In terms of pedestrian only and driveways that have the vehicular traffic, what is the general amount of years that you're going to get out of these sealers?
Yeah, that's a tough question just to give a blanket statement for. Obviously, if you're in Miami, it's going to be a lot different than if you're in Denver, than if you're in Toronto. I always tell those customers, you'd rather start their expectations somewhat low and exceed them than set them high and not meet them. So tell them, 2 to 3 years. Say you're going to call them after 2 years. But anywhere from 2 to 5 years is really your window, and that's so much dependent on weather and sunlight and those factors.
Definitely. Now, getting into the installation side of things, water-based sealers, after they've done the effluent cleaning, how long do they need to wait? And then what's the process like when applying a water-based sealer?
Yeah, so normally you would effluent clean, at minimum the day before. It can be up to a couple weeks before. That's fine. But you definitely want it to be dry. You want to have a forecast of no rain for 24 hours. And then with a water-based sealer, you're spraying it and then you're back rolling it. So a smaller job, I've seen one guy do it plenty of times. If you want to be effective and quick, 2 guys. If you're doing a driveway, probably more like 3 guys. Your person spraying is always going to be ahead of your person rolling. So the more people you can have rolling, on the bigger the job gets, the faster you'll get it done. If you have say a 2,500 square foot driveway, if you have 2 to 3 guys with you to roll to that one guy who's spraying, then you're going to get it done pretty fast. And when you're spraying the sealer on the surface to the point of it almost puddling, and then you're coming right next to them with a dry napped roller and back rolling that in until there's no standing liquid left on top of the paver. And the main thing with the person running the sprayer, you don't want them to have their headphones in, looking down, not paying attention, and look up on a warm day and they're 400 feet ahead of their guys rolling. You want them to you never want to be more than 100 square feet ahead of the guys with the sprayer to your guys rolling.
Now, what about any mistakes that would happen with a water-based application? What's like a typical maybe mess up that can be fixed, and how would you fix it?
Probably the most likely mess up you see is just roller streaks from not getting it back rolled unevenly. If you're spraying a 2,000 square foot driveway and you're using a roller, that roller is going to get pretty saturated. If you're using a water-based sealer, you can just step over into the mulch or into the grass and wring that roller out with your hand every now and then and get it somewhat dry and then come back and keep rolling. Or you could replace your rollers as you're going throughout the job. You don't want to just keep using one roller that you've never wrung out for a 2,000 square foot driveway for 2 coats, because at that point you just have a mop at the end of your stick. So you want to make sure your roller is able to take off the excess and give you that smooth, even finish that you want.
For sure. And in terms of how many applications, how many coats do you have to do with the water-based?
It varies. It can either be 1 or 2 coats. If it does require a second coat, you're coming back and doing that almost right after you're done with your first coat. If you're doing a driveway, normally by the time you're done, you could go back to where you started and it's already tacky dry, and you could go ahead and put on your second coat.
And in terms of pedestrian traffic or vehicular traffic on top of that, how long do we have to wait?
Ideally, you'd like to not have any vehicles on it for 24 to 48 hours. Pedestrians, if it's a day that isn't all warm, normally it's just a matter of an hour or two before they could walk on it. As long as it's not tacky, they could start walking on it.
And then getting into the solvent-based application, what are we getting into then in terms of installing it?
Yes, same method. So you're still spraying and back rolling. It might be a little different as far as what you're using for a sprayer, because solvent-based will eat away all the rubber in any sprayer. So either you can buy a very nice sprayer that's mostly got metal parts that you can keep rewashing over and over again, or some guys just buy a cheap Roundup type sprayer from their local home center or dealership. $20 sprayer, spray it one time for that job and just build that cost into the quote and throw that sprayer away. But the application process is still basically the same, spraying and back rolling. It's just how those solvent based can be a little rougher on your sprayers, especially if you have a nice sprayer setup that you want to keep nice.
And any excess buildup with a solvent-based sealer, say after it's been applied, and you can definitely tell in some spots that there was just too much applied there. What do you need to do with that?
Well, you can always take like xylene and actually re-liquefy the sealer if you had to. And you can pour the xylene on there, and it actually re-liquefies the sealer, and you can take a squeegee or a roller and pull some of that back off. But that's not an issue you should be running into too often, honestly. As long as you're spraying evenly and rolling evenly, you should get a pretty even application.
And then in terms of it being too slippery or customers being really concerned about that, I understand that there's also a product that you can add to it to add a little bit of grit so that if, say, an older customer is getting out of their car in the wintertime, they are not sliding around on a skating rink?
Sure, yeah, you can. We have the anti-slip grip, which is basically little tiny plastic pebbles that you pour into the sealer and mix it up before you spray it and apply it, and that actually gives a little grit to the sealer. But, if slipperiness is their concern, again, you can always go back to a non-film forming sealer as well to avoid any slipperiness with, young children, pool decks, older family members, stuff like that. So there's a couple different options when they bring up the slip factor to you when you're quoting the job.
Absolutely. Now, Aaron, we've covered a lot in this episode, a lot of great information. Thank you so much. And is there anything else that, we may have missed that you'd want to slip in here at the very end of the interview?
I would just talk about having the proper setup and tools for the job can make this a pretty easy process. I see a lot of guys out there with a backpack sprayer or something like that. If you're getting into sealing and you're going to be doing a lot of it, purchasing a nice sprayer will make your jobs go so much faster. There's companies out there like SMK who make a sprayer that basically drops right into a 5-gallon bucket, so you're not even wasting the time pouring that bucket into a sprayer to spray it. Is pumping it straight out of the bucket you already have. It runs on a 18-volt DeWalt battery. You can get up to 100 feet of hose with it, and you're just spraying and going. So all that time you're saving, not pouring 1-gallon cans into sprayers, not pumping a sprayer constantly, not taking it on and off your back. Things like that can save you a lot of time. If you're doing one 3,000 square foot job, I would put the $600-700 into a nice sprayer setup and go ahead and have it, and then you'll be so much more profitable and faster after that. And then also, this is money you're leaving on the table if you're not offering it to your customers. If you've installed the job, why not offer a clean and seal? What I always say to people is, if you've gone and bought a new car, what is it they do once they get you in the finance room? They sell you all those add-ons, right? They sell you tire and rim protection, upholstery warranties, exterior warranties, powertrain warranties. This is the same thing. You're selling a warranty to your customer. If you put in a beautiful outdoor living space in their backyard and it has a built-in grill island, why would you not say, hey, do you want me to come back and seal this? You're cooking out here. I don't want you to have grease stains all over this. I don't want your friends coming out here spilling a hot dog on here or whatever it is, having stains. Show them that natural look sealer. Even if they say, I love the way the pavers look right now, say, okay, well, here's this natural look sealer that won't change the way this looks at all, but pour some oil on one paver that you sealed with natural look, ketchup, whatever it is. Show them that it's beading on there and how easy it is to wipe it off, and then pour it on a regular paver and show that oil just soaking right in, and how you tell them you'd have to come back out there and clean that for them if they didn't seal it. Sell them the warranty, sell them the protection. A lot of people just think about sealers and think about selling them that look. They like the way their pavers look when it just rained on them. And absolutely, let's give them that. But let's also sell them warranty and protection on their beautiful space you just built. If they paid $50,000 for their driveway or their backyard, what's another $3,000-4,000 to add on to that for them to protect it for years to come?
Absolutely, and great sales advice to sell this on a job, which brings me to a couple other questions that you kind of brought up there. Is after installing a project, how long should you wait to clean and seal that project? Say it's the same customer, you just installed a driveway for them or a backyard patio. How long should you wait before you can go back and clean and seal it?
I would always check with your paver manufacturer, to see what they say, because they tend to vary. At the absolute bare minimum, you need to wait 28 days if you installed a polymeric sand for the polymeric sand to set up and cure. Most of the time, we're going to say 3 to 6 months. I like to say 6 months. You gave it 2 seasons to roll through. Also, that gives you a good window, because spring and fall are going to be your best times to seal, because you're going to get the best weather window as far as temperatures and all that. So normally tell them, hey, I'll be out here. If you finish the job in fall, say, hey, I'll see you in the spring. Finish the job in the spring, say, I'll see you in the fall, something like that. So, 3 to 6 months is normally a good window to set for that customer.
Now, can you install a sealer without having the polymeric sand in the joints? Is this a possibility, or is this something that you would suggest to avoid?
Before we ever brought out polymeric sand, the way you stabilized your joints was with a liquid, was with a joint stabilizing sealer. So you can absolutely do that. If a lot of commercial projects still do that in some places. So you can sweep in a regular sand, vibrate that sand in, and come back with one of our joint stabilizing sealers, which we have in both water-based and solvent-based, and actually seal the paver, protect the paver, and lock in that sand joint. We also make those for permeable systems as well. So you can actually seal a permeable system with our sealers as well, and lock in the aggregate, but not affect the water flow through the aggregate, so you still have your permeable system.
Incredible. Amazing stuff. And where can our audience learn more about Techniseal and all the different products that it has to offer?
Yeah, so you can visit Techniseal.com. Make sure once you log in there that you select whether you're in the U.S. or Canada or wherever you are, and if you're a homeowner, or professional, you can contact us on the website. You can contact us by calling our office. Instagram's a great way to reach out to us. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of our social media channels. You can certainly reach us anywhere there. At your dealership and at all the shows this winter, you can meet all your Techniseal reps. We'll all be out all show season long. If you don't know your Techniseal rep, ask your dealer who they are, and they'll tell you and give you their phone number. And, we're here to help you guys. If you're on a job site and you got a question, call your local rep. That's what we're here to do. We're here to help you guys make more money and feel confident in what you're doing. So plenty of ways to reach out to us, and we're always more than happy to hear from anybody.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Visit us at howtohardscape.com for more information on cleaning and sealing. Type it in the search bar. We're going to have an article up there very shortly. Let us know what you want to learn about from new future episodes by reaching out to us on our social channels at Instagram at howtohardscape, and even contact us directly through email, contact@howtohardscape.com. We'd love it if you would subscribe to our podcast, leave us a rating and review. This really helps us get this podcast out there and into more people's ears that want to listen to it, and it helps us attract more guests onto the show. We look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.